Hi friends, welcome to the Loved and Listened to channel. I am Nicole and today we're going to react to a mental health related meme that I saw on Facebook a couple of days ago. So the meme is, growing up with parents who can regulate their own emotions is a less talked about form of generational wealth. If you didn't have someone who could see and hold space for your big feelings and co-regulate with you, you're likely still learning to navigate these skills in adulthood. So I saw this meme on Tracy McMillan's Facebook page, but it comes from at the EQ school. And I am imagining EQ stands for emotional quotient, like IQ. So I had a lot of thoughts about this meme, and I thought that I would share them with you and how I think that actually growing up with parents or people around you who know how to emotionally regulate, like how it can have a really positive effect on your mental health. And I think that because I feel like I am the product of a group of people who raised me, a group of flawed but very loving people who raised me, who, in my opinion, demonstrated a lot of this emotional regulation. So today in this video, I'm going to share with you 5 ways that I feel that being raised by emotionally intelligent, emotionally aware type of people have been helpful to me as an adult. So if you're watching this as a parent, which I've had friends ask me, like, how did you become a person who is, for the most part, kind of like really able to tap into my own self-awareness? Like, I've had people ask me, like, well, how did you become this way? And I think that, or not, I know that a lot of the reason why I am this way is because of the people who were around me in my childhood. So for me, in my childhood, I grew up with a single mother, and I have an older sibling, and then I had people from my mother's side around me. So my grandmother, one aunt, one uncle, and then basically like all of their extended family, chosen family, friends, and things like that. But like the people who were closest to me, there were only a few of those people in my life. But even growing up without knowing my father's side of the family and having I can count the number of times on one hand how many times I interacted with my father as a child in my memory. Even without that side of the family, I never felt like I was missing anything. And I always felt like I was really well loved. And another thing that as I've gotten older, that I understand now as an adult that's really important to children is I also felt respected. I felt like my emotions were respected and how I, felt about things, my thoughts, all those things. And that is a really big thing that goes into teaching giving your kids a good foundation for having strong mental stability, because you have to be able to respect yourself, respect how you feel about things in order to build up the other skills that we might associate with being able to regulate your emotions, being able to navigate life in like a easy, positive way. So that's a really big thing. I just wanted to share that before I get into my 5 reasons. Really, if you're a parent right now, start practicing respecting your children, their thoughts, their emotions. A lot of parents don't do this. I've seen it all the time. Respect what they're going through, the level at which they're going through whatever they're going through. Just respecting that will teach them it'll help them to internalize that behavior. And it'll teach them that what they feel and what they think is important. And just having that is very useful in this life. So, all that being said, let's start with number one. So, the first thing is the first way that I think growing up with people who were able to emotionally regulate well. The first way that I think that it was very helpful to me is I am naturally quite empathetic, even though I consider myself to be some mix of introverted and misanthropic. So introverted meaning, I'm never the life of the party really, or if I am, I have to sleep it off for several days afterwards. Introverted meaning that I gain energy after resting and being by myself, not out with other people and stuff. And misanthropic, I say that in like a funny way, but also in kind of like a not funny way. I don't super duper love people. Like I love people, but I don't really like people. I don't want anything bad to happen to anyone, but I am definitely not naturally a people person. But because I grew up with people who showed a lot of ability to be at least some level of self-aware and some level of like being able to regulate their own emotions, I saw that as a model, especially from my mother. And now, as an adult, even in times where my natural thought is to basically shove somebody out the way and just be very dismissive, like my hand is doing, to be very dismissive of people. But because I saw my mother demonstrate strong levels of empathy towards other people that she knew and people that she didn't know, because I saw that over and over, every day my mother was and is like that, I just naturally, or maybe not naturally, through nurturing, I am an empathetic person, even though I would say that my natural personality is not really that way. So I put that on the list because I think that it's really difficult to be considerate of other people and to just look for instances where you can be kind to other people if you don't have a good sense of your own emotions. So for example, I think I wrote it down. Yes. So I wrote it down. I want to share this story about my mom. So many years ago when I moved to Houston, I moved into an apartment complex. And the day that we showed up, my mother was with me at this time. And the day that we showed up to get the keys and to sign the lease and stuff, the leasing lady, the leasing manager, the leasing assistant was sad. There was something wrong with her. And I did notice it. But again, naturally, sometimes I really am kind of okay, come on, we got to do this thing, hurry up, let's get through this thing. Especially if there's something related to time, I can be just a bulldozer with people if I'm in a rush or something, right? But my mother is not like that. And while we were going through the paperwork and stuff, my mother just stopped and just out of the blue, well, not out of the blue, but she said, "What's wrong? You seem sad." And this leasing agent just she started, the tears were almost there, she kept it professional, but her eyes started to water up. And I actually at this point don't remember exactly what she said, but I do remember that she told my mom a little bit about why she was sad. And I remember my mother just listening to this total stranger about why they were sad. And just being a really good human being to a total stranger. And that happened to me like maybe when I was 21 or so. I don't remember exactly when I moved here, maybe 22 or so, whatever. But when I was an adult, that happened. And that story still sticks with me, even though I no longer remember all of the specifics. But that was just a really good example and a good model of like how my mother continuously just showed empathy towards other people. And I think that also that story shows the power that parents can have over their children and how their children end up, because times when I catch myself being dismissive towards other people, that story will like pop into my mind, and then I'll be able to catch myself and say, oh wait, no, don't be a jerk in this situation. This is not what was modeled for you. This is not, who you're trying to be. You can be better than this. You saw your mom do it. You can be better than this. So, I hope that what I'm saying is like tying in together with emotional intelligence and being able to regulate your own emotions, because in my opinion, that story that I just shared with you about what I saw my mother do, it helped me develop kind of like a mini skill set of like, okay, when I am frustrated or in a hurry or whatever, I'm not going to automatically just disregard the feelings of other people. And because I saw my mother be empathetic and regulate like how she was feeling, because she also was like, let's get this over with. But she didn't act that out. So I hope this is making sense. I hope I'm not over explaining it. But that's the first thing that I wanted to share. The first way I've become naturally empathetic, primarily thanks to seeing my mother behave in empathetic ways towards other people. And it does take quite a bit of internal regulation to be able to put aside sometimes the emotions that you're going through in order to care about other people. The second way is, now, don't come for me in the comments, like all 10 people who will see this video. But the second way is, I don't really have a lot of things that I regret over my life. And I think that's because I can usually control my actions regardless of how I'm feeling. Most of the times I can control how I react to things and give myself some time to consider a situation before reacting or engaging. That is almost impossible to do if you do not have a good level of internal ability to regulate your emotions. And it's hard to regulate your emotions if you did not have people model that for you when you were a child. If you grew up in a place where people were constantly like fighting and just like popping off, just being reactive and angry. And the thing that I've seen a lot with children is anger. They live in households where people are like constantly angry and fighting and like being petty and mean towards each other and all this stuff. If you grew up in a situation like that, it's very likely that when you become an adult, you will think that that is how you interact with conflict, and that's how you should express how you feel. Because I did not grow up, even though I grew up in the hood, child, but in my, like the people who were closest to me, they did not behave that way. I grew up knowing that I could always be like, let me go think about this. Let me go journal about this. Let me just take a step, take a step back, and being able to kind of get yourself together before you react keeps you from like being in fights, going out with the wrong people, hanging out with the wrong crowd, hanging out with people who will like get you in trouble and stuff, because you already have like some programming to give yourself some space to not just like boom, like react to stuff. Right? So again, if you are a parent and you're watching this and you are, working on raising these awesome little kids or whatever, model having feelings and showing feelings, but not overly reactive, right? Things like, you can't be perfect with this, but you can definitely model, as the people who were close to me did, just being like, okay, I'm going to go think about this, or I'm going to go take a walk, I'm going to go cool down, or whatever. So that is a very, very good thing to model for your kids. And will lead to them possibly, maybe, I don't know, but it can lead to them not having like so many regrets, because a lot of the things that we regret that we do are done in a heightened emotional state. So I got mad and I did this thing, and now, I'm sad about it. I was mad and I cussed out somebody, or I said some really effed up stuff that I can't take back. Regret. Number 3, my mother and others around me spoke to me in a caring way, but always expected me to use logic. And like for old Black people, we probably call that common sense. Especially if you're Southern, you might call that common sense. But even though I was well cared for, I always had high expectations on me for my behavior, and primarily related to using your common sense, taking some time before you do anything that could get you in jail or something. Take some time and think logically. Again, that is very hard to do if you have not grown up with people who demonstrate emotional intelligence, the ability to regulate their own emotions. I wrote down that my mother and others around me spoke to me in a caring way, but always expected me to use logic. I wrote that down that way because I don't want to convey a message that you have to raise your kids in really like black and white ways. I don't think that that is possible. I certainly don't think it's healthy. I think it's healthy to show your own feelings and show your kids how you work through your feelings and things like that. And I think it's important to always, or at least most of the time, try to be nice to your kids, even when they are getting on your nerves. So I know that this is not possible all the time. My mother is basically a saint, and I can think of at least one time where she was like, oh my God, what do you want, right? So, but for the most part, try to be nice to your kids, even when they're kind of getting on your nerves. But within that niceness and kindness, still have expectations of them. A lot of kids will really work hard to meet their parents' expectations, even long into adulthood. That kind of human behavior of always wanting our parents to be proud and, things like that, you can use that to your advantage by letting your kiddos know, like, hey, you can, I'm so proud that you were able to go to your room and work through that anger without hitting your sister or acting out or whatever. You can reinforce these concepts of emotional regulation by letting your kids know when they've done a good job and, telling them that they're doing well in things that are related to their mental health and their emotional intelligence, as well as, how you might compliment them. on their appearance or their like sports performance or their grades or things like that. Think about it as like a holistic way to interact with your kids. Way number 4, I was given space to have my own feelings and express my feelings. My mother and brother did not attempt to exert much control over me. It takes a lot of self-regulation to not want to control the people around you. So let's talk about self-regulation and control. Wow. When I wrote this down, I thought, I have to make a whole video just on this topic as well. Because over time, like being in romantic relationships, especially, and talking to other women, especially, I see a pattern between people, men or women, who can self-regulate and the ones who can't, and how they try to control their partner. So for people who have good self-regulation, you have to kind of like mind your own self quite a bit in order to be a person who is self-aware. And you don't have a lot of time to worry about or like judge other people. That's one thing I really learned through going to therapy and improving myself and stuff. Once I started to really work on improving myself, I not only like no longer had interest in even trying to control or manipulate another person's emotions, but I just like the desire is gone because now my energy is just used on, hey, what is my role in this situation? How can I do better? Or if it can't be better, how am I going to gracefully exit this situation? That's pretty much it. It's all right. So in relation to growing up with people around me who had good emotional regulation, I don't have kids, but I hypothesize that it's hard to allow a child to have their own feelings and opinions different from your own if you don't have good self-control. If you think that your kids are just going to be little, copies of you, and you think that their political beliefs, their spiritual beliefs, their beliefs about how much butter to put on the popcorn at the movies, if you think all of their opinions should just match yours, then take a minute and ask yourself why you think that is. Why you feel like your control, your parenting needs to extend to control. I'm not talking about like, hey, making sure your kiddo like comes in for curfew or keeping them safe, but just like the things that make them a human, the things that give them their own experience of life. Those decisions might be different from the ones that you would make. And if you have some good level of emotional regulation, I think that you'll be able to release, or not release, but at least accept that the person that you physically made is not you. And it's all right. That is okay. That is okay. So for me, and when I was growing up, I was not only given space to have what I'm calling big feelings, right? So anger, or like, having a big crush, things like that, or disappointment. One of my common emotions is disappointment. I was given space to have those emotions and to express them, but I was also just shown that what I was feeling, even if it wasn't the same that someone else in my family would feel in the same situation, that it was okay. That's all right. You are very, very sad about losing the chess tournament. In my personal life, this is a true story. When I was a kid, I played chess and I was very, very, very good. And I went to a tournament and I was cocky. I was so good, I'd beaten so many people that I ended up making a dumb mistake. And I got third place instead of first place. And when I made the mistake, it's like immediately I knew that I had made the mistake on the board, whatever, right? And I was furious for a long time, like over a week. And my poor mother living in the house with me, she just let me feel those feelings. She was very gentle in how she parented me, saying things like, oh, next time you can do it, or, whatever. But she never came down on me like, oh, you're still mad about that? That's a stupid thing to be mad about. Like, she never tried to project how she would feel or what she would do onto how I was feeling and what I was doing. I was expressing my own frustration and disappointment with myself within a normal range. Like, I was moody and I was writing and I cried and blah, that kind of thing. So it wasn't anything extreme, but I do appreciate that time that my mother was very, she allowed me to have those feelings. So again, I don't think that's possible to be that way unless you are regulating your own emotions, because I am sure at some point my mother was like, oh, this kid, she's still angry about this thing that happened last week over this game. How could she still be mad? I'm sure at some point she thought that, but she still did not try to make me adhere to what she thought I should be feeling. And her doing that, again, reinforced to me that it was okay for me to have the feelings that I felt. All right, so the last way that I feel like growing up with people who were able to emotionally regulate really helped me with my mental health as I've become an adult and still quite an adult. So the fifth way is I rarely saw emotional outbursts at home, and love was the underlying theme of interactions. So this one is a big one to me because I used to work with kids, and often I would see parents just be very reactive in a negative way with their kids. And they would teach them to be like immediately angry, immediately fighting, immediately like cussing and like doing this kind of stuff. And I grew up with some colorful characters for sure, but they were never I was never taught like, well, if you have a conflict, you better fight right away. So growing up in the hood, of course, I was taught that sometimes you have to fight. And when I had to fight, I did fight. But I was also physically fight. But I also was taught to try to resolve conflicts with words and logic first. And then if that did not work, I was also given the training to go to fisticuffs with somebody. But I've seen lots of parents who don't follow that same kind of thing. And I have also seen where the emotional outbursts that happen when kids are at school, like for example, you can pretty much tell that they get it from home. They see it at home. You can tell like how they interact with their siblings. You can tell that, when mom or dad gets angry at home, that they start like yelling and fighting and cussing and crying and throwing things. You can tell because the kids do the behavior most of the time. They do the behavior that they see at home. They do it in public, no matter where they're at the movie theater, at school, whatever, right? Whereas if the child sees at least some controlled level of expressing feelings at home, they see that that's what they learn to do. And so for me, when I was growing up, and when I was a teacher, I would be so horrified the way that some of the parents would come to school and talk to their kids or pick them up or like cuss at them or just speak to them, because in my hood household, because I keep saying that because I feel like sometimes people think like, oh, if you grew up in the hood, then you're automatically like a violent person or something, which is not true. But in my house, I almost never saw like any crazy stuff go down. People just never was like, oh my God, like all this stuff. Like, even when cuss words were used, I still knew that the people talking to each other like loved each other, and this was just a short, unusual thing that was going on. And using cuss words also is not necessarily like, oh, I hate you. When I'm not on YouTube, I use lots of cuss words, and it's not with any level of aggression most of the time. So think about how you resolve conflict in front of your kids, because they will internalize that as how or to what level they need to regulate their own emotions. If they see you cussing and fussing and fighting and like being loud and like attacking people and stuff at the store, at home, or whatever, they think that's okay. And they go out and repeat that. And what does that lead to? A lot of times that can lead to getting yourself into situations that you regret, or legal troubles, or other, things like that. So growing up with people who, again, express their emotions, sometimes those emotions were anger, frustration, or whatever. I did experience people have arguments and things like that when I was a kid, but I never saw some of the crazy, horrible things that I have heard and experienced parents doing to kids, in modern times. So those are my 5 ways that I wanted to talk about in agreement with this meme. So just to read this meme again. Growing up with parents who can regulate their own emotions is a less talked about form of generational wealth. I feel extremely wealthy, happy. Well, not happy all the time, but wealthy and thankful for the people that I grew up with, because as I've gotten older, I just see so many instances of people who don't have higher levels of emotional regulation. And at my age, the people that I know who are in their 40s or late 30s, 50s and older, at my age is where you can see how it plays out. When a person is young or still like in K through 12 school, I think we have like this mentality of like, well, they're still young, they'll figure it out. But as you get older, you have like irrefutable proof that, hey, it didn't work out. The way that that person was raised, the way that they did not receive any modeling or training on how to regulate their emotions, it didn't work out. They still need help. And if that's you, that's totally okay. But I will say that once you get into like your 30s and 40s and older, then it becomes your job to learn how to regulate your own emotions, how to become more self-aware, how to behave better, act like kind human beings, like my mom. So if you enjoyed this video, which I hope you did, if you stayed until the end, I absolutely love you. Thank you for hanging in there with me. I hope that what I talked about was, it made sense and it was helpful. And if you're, older and dealing with these types of things now, just know that it is not too late for you. You can still change until you take your last breath. You can still change and become a more even-keeled person if you want to work on it. So I hope this video was helpful, and if you found any value in it, please make sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Doing so kind of helps my small channel grow and helps people to find out about the mental health stuff and the health stuff and the vlogs and all the good stuff that I make on this channel. So have a wonderful day. I'll see you in the next video. Namaste.